record. Hello and
All right.
welcome to the, that's all right, we'll cut that up. Hello and welcome to the Halloween special. Hello and welcome to this very spooky episode of the Autos and Airwaves podcast. I am your host, Alex Shum. I currently look very stupid right now for those that are watching this on YouTube. I'm dressed up as a mummy and I look halfway between a mummy and a terrorist. I'm covered in toilet paper and medical tape, and I look really stupid. The glasses don't help either, but we will soldier on. It is the Halloween special. We are joined by my friend Brian, also known as Vroom Vroom Brian on Instagram and YouTube, a fellow car enthusiast all the way from beautiful sunny California. So Brian, thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking forward to talking about automotive topics with you.
Thank you so much. Really enjoy listening to some of your past podcasts, and I'm really glad that I'm here today to be one of your guests.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm glad we could work this out. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first before we get into the cars and bids segment?
Sure. So ever since when I was a child, I really love cars. I kind of find cars as a way to show a person's characteristic and also the culture and just in generally art. From the sound, technology, just even the looks, I find cars a thing that is pretty cool to look at, especially when cars is a very necessity need for our daily needs. And especially within the last 5 years where car technologies kind of like really improved, that's kind of when I feel like cars is a really, really important thing for the modern world. And kind of like growing up in Southern California, like the car culture is really, really diverse from tuners, classic, and exotics. Obviously, the Fast and the Furious is kind of based out of Southern California.
Right.
And so I really, really enjoy kind of like embracing it and learning about the car culture. Kind of like within the next, I think fast forwarding to 2019, I started my first YouTube channel, the Vroom Vroom Brian. And I reviewed the Tesla Model S. Loved it. Really enjoy having the time to test drive it. But I kind of want to do something a bit more. So I expanded now to do some more of the analytical stuff for modern / car enthusiasts. And especially right now when COVID has an interesting car market, I therefore decided to kind of like stick with my materials to be more on the day-to-day analytical stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I like about your stuff. I mean, I suck at math, but I'm a numbers guy. I really like analytics, and I just like learn. I love researching the auto industry, all the new cars and stuff coming out. And I think you do a really good job on your channel with that. Talking about the car markets, stuff that's coming out, stuff that came out in the past. You have a really good variety of stuff. So, yeah, and especially living out in LA, the car culture there is insane. I mean, it's just like it is on movies and television. It really is such a diverse, the diversity in the car culture there is honestly insane. It really is. Of course, that being a big city and also a city with a lot of money. So you have everything from, like little shit boxes all the way up to, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Bugattis, you name it. And a Range Rover on every street corner of every block in a 30-mile radius. But yeah, so that's great. We can find you on YouTube and Instagram. And so with that, let's move on to the cars and bids segment. So you can go first.
Sure.
And let me pull this up real quick. Here we go.
Sure. So yeah, this is the car that I chose, which is a 2002 Porsche 911 Turbo, the 996 model. And I chose this car for 3 reasons. The first thing is this is one of the best buys to buy on the market today. I've talked a lot about this car, the Turbo plus also the regular one on my YouTube a lot. And in addition to that, this is kind of one of the best ways to kind of own a modern Porsche, especially if you're kind of like into kind of like start kind of like one of the first Porsches if you want to kind of like getting into, or just kind of like a modern classic that you just want to have that is appreciated. Definitely, I know it's not as great as the new 992, but compared to like the 964s, the 930s, the 993s, this is such a way better buy. It's a lot faster. It's more comfortable. The performance is, especially for the turbo, is absolutely insane. It's very underrated, and kind of for the value for the money, it seems more reasonable than if you go out and buy like a 930 turbo or 964 turbo. With this car, when it had 0 to 60 around 4 seconds with a top speed of 190 miles per hour, which is still insane by modern standards.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, this car have kind of like hit its low point right now. The prices already kind of like started to rise up a little bit, but kind of like, but it's kind of like starting to be that point where the prices started to kind of like shift and could potentially go up.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah.
It is.
And I guess kind of,
they are starting to go up. And I know the whole reason why the 996 was always the cheaper one is because no one liked the way it looks. It had, the fried egg headlights.
Yep.
I mean, I don't mind them that much. I think it is the ugliest 911 in my opinion, but it's still a 911. It's still a wonderful car. And these ones with the turbos are reliable. It's got the Metzger engine, but they don't have the IMS bearing issues that the naturally aspirated cars, are known for. But I know with the NA cars, if you get the IMS bearing fixed or if you get it replaced before it goes bad, then it won't be an issue. And the Metzger engine is known for its reputation for quality and reliability, and it's a very good engine. And 996 chassis was great. It was the first water cooled 911. It kind of brought the 911 into the modern era. And I know when it came out, a lot of people were upset, but 20 years later, it's changed. People's opinions have changed, and it is, it's been, prices are going up, and and this one's a lovely example. I mean, I'm not too keen on the aftermarket wheels, but I love seal gray is one of my favorite Porsche colors of all time. The gray interior is really nice as well, and it's just overall a pretty solid car, relatively low miles.
Yeah, and kind of like speaking about like Halloween, this car actually kind of haunted me in a way, kind of sense where there were some 996 turbos or just even the regular ones around kind of like where I live for sales or previously for sale. And some of these are just like, I would like, obviously this is more of a pristine condition, but like even the ones that I find in my local markets, they're selling like around like $35,000-$40,000, even though they're a little bit high mileage. But hey, for 40 grand, I mean, you still buy a great supercar for that price too. And if you really want to go just kind of back to the like, the regular Carrera, like 20,000, maybe under 30,000, still a great solid car.
Yeah, and this one sold for 52.5. Pretty good price. But yeah, it's oh my god, I look so incredible. Oh my god, I cannot look at myself anymore. I look so fucking stupid right now. But it's Halloween. You gotta just kind of go with it. This is not staying on the whole time. No, it's not. But yeah, 911's great. 996 really, in some people's opinions, this as well as the 997 were the last like truly like kind of analog Porsches before they all went very electronic. The 997 was the last one with hydraulic power steering before they went to E-Pass, and the 991, which just sucked, and the 991, and then they did the 991.2, and it improved a lot. Still wasn't perfect, but improved a lot. And then now 992 steering is amazing. There's also pre-PDK as well, which is interesting. One of my best friends used to have a 997 turbo Tiptronic.
Oh, nice.
That was an interesting car. It was great, but that transmission sucked. It was a 5-speed. It was ratios were too long. It just was not. It was not right. It was pre-PDK. I would not get any. First of all, I would not get any 911 with a PDK, or any 911 with an automatic. But if I was forced to, it would have to be a PDK car because I don't like the Tiptronics. They just weren't very good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, especially kind of like, I think especially the early 996, it's like in this case, I mean, there's a little earlier, a little later, but like especially like back in 1999 when they introduced the I think the Tiptronic, that was kind of like, they were like, if it was maintained okay, then it should be fine, but it's compared to the manual. I mean, the manual is more of a, it was just a better car to maintain, especially kind of like, this was kind of one of the first times when Porsche introduced like a brand new automatic system to like just the 911 or just even the Porsche line in general.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a solid car. It really is. 996 does have a special spot in Porsche history, even though it might not be the brightest spot in Porsche history. It still represents the 911 coming into like the modern era.
Absolutely.
It's and for that reason, it's I think it's one of the most special generations of 911. So I guess moving on, we'll go to my car, which I chose a car I was surprised to find out is local to me. It's for sale. It's for on auction here in Cars and Bids here in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I live. It's a 2007 Pontiac Solstice Gxp. So this is the performance version of the Solstice. It's powered by a 2-liter turbocharged LNF Ecotec 4-cylinder engine. Makes 260 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque, same number. And for my metric system friends, it's 353 Newton meters torque. What was cool about the GXP is it was like their performance. It was the performance version of the Solstice. The standard one had like I think it was like a 2.3 or a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It wasn't very fast. The GXP was the performance one. It got the turbo, got different suspension tuning, so it was stiffer. It has a mechanical limited slip rear differential. What's cool about these, it's soft top, not power operated. It was a manual soft top, and the GXP also had 18-inch wheels. What's really cool about this one is that it has almost 223,000 miles on it. It has had an engine replacement, and this one is the 5-speed manual. But yeah, I mean, 222,700 miles. And yeah, I mean, this platform, these little sports cars that came out of, this is probably the best thing ever to come out of mid-2000s GM. Was the Solstice, and then the Saturn Sky, which was the Saturn version of this car. It was a little bit cheaper. I think it looked better. And then they had the Opel GT, which would look the exact same as a Saturn with an Opel badge on it. They were all built in here in the US, and they were exported to Europe. And they were it was a good little car, especially with this the LNF Ecotec engine. It's a really good engine. There's some turbo lag to be expected, but not as much as you would expect, and certainly not as much as you would expect from a car from this era. But yeah, this one has seen better days, but for something with, almost 223,000 miles, it's in pretty good shape. I mean, the driver's seat is horrendous, but the rest of it is actually pretty clean. I mean, the passenger seat's really nice. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that thing. Oh my God. Hey, hang on. That's Alt Park. I know exactly where that is. They have a Concours every year. These pictures are taken at Alt Park. It's like, oh yeah, I know exactly where this place is. But yeah, it's an interesting car. It is an interesting car, and they're really fun to drive. They are. I've not driven a GXP. I have driven a Sky Redline, which is the exact same one as this, but the interior was horrendously cheap. Of course, coming from mid-2000s GM, the bean counters, had their say. But other than that, it was a really, really good little car, rear-wheel drive, fun car. So with that, I guess, do you want to move on to, you want to talk about Z06 and then we'll go into the Halloween special part of the thing, or do you want to do the Halloween stuff first? I'll leave that up to you.
I'm okay to do either one. We can do the
Let's do that.
Corvette,
All right.
or
Yeah.
or do you want to do the Halloween?
Let's just do the Halloween stuff first.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, before we move on, I definitely would want to say one thing about the Pontiac.
Go ahead.
Like I remember when this car came out, I remember this is like when I was back in like grade school, like in grade school or middle school. I remember this car was kind of like the car they want to try to GM's answer to the MX-5.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
And basically, I think it was obviously it's still people still like the MX-5 because of the brand name, and obviously the MX-5 is just such a legendary JD Mazda car, or just even a legendary car in the roadster world. But I definitely would say this is one of the strongest contenders that could take down, or even maybe be better than the MX-5. Obviously the interior you mentioned isn't that great, but I mean, like in terms of like transmission, mechanical engine, all these other stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is a fairly reliable. I mean, it's very simple, very easy to maintain.
I disagree with you on the transmission. It was okay. It was not great. It didn't completely suck, but it was not. It was just kind of at your average 5-speed at the time. But then the MX-5 at that time had a 6-speed back then, right?
I think it had a 6-speed. I think the NC had it already.
Yeah, the NC had a 6-speed. I know it did like later in its life cycle. And I know the NC came out in like 05. I think that always had a 6-speed. Or maybe like the base model had a 5-speed, and then all the other ones had a 6. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've like looked into that car. But yeah, so let's move on now to the Halloween special. So yeah, happy Halloween. This is what I'm doing to celebrate Halloween. Yeah. I stopped trick-or-treating when I was 8 years old. And every Halloween party I've been to, I just wore like one of those headbands with like that has like the machete, so it looks like someone like cut your head. Like that was my Halloween party costume. I just then this year I was like, okay, I had this party that I was supposed to go to, and I was like, what do I dress up as Eggsy from the Kingsman movies, because these glasses are the actual glasses from the movie. This is not like,
oh wow,
these are the glasses. And it's a good movie. It's not extreme, people know what it is, but it's not like if you go up to some random person like, oh, have you seen the Kingsman movie? It's like, it's probably like a 50-50 chance. Because they were popular here, but they weren't huge. And then the other thing was Bond. No Time to Die just came out. Great movie if you haven't seen it. And yeah, I couldn't decide. I was like, Bond is really hot right now, but I have the Kingsman glasses. Bond is really hot right now, and I drive a Defender, even though it's the villain's car. But I have the Kingsman glasses, and I could pull that off really well. Ultimately, I went with Bond. So that's what I'm dressing up for this party tonight that ended up getting canceled, but now I'm hosting a party. So it all worked out in the end. And now I'm dressed like a mummy for this, and I look incredibly fucking stupid. I mean, like I said, I look halfway between a terrorist and a mummy and a corpse or whatever. I don't know. I just look incredibly. This is the most like ghetto looking mummy costume I've ever seen. I just look ridiculous. Oh, for fuck's sake. I can't take this anymore. I can't do this. But let's happy Halloween, eat your candy, and let's move into the ugly cars. So we'll do this, like I'll start off with one, and then you'll do the next one, and then I'll do one, and then blah blah blah.
Sure.
So what I chose for my first one is this, the Ssangyong Rodius. How ugly is this thing? I know it was supposed to be inspired by like a yacht. Yeah, no, that thing is appalling. I mean, that looks like something a nun would drive to carry around orphan children in. Like, that's like the official car of an orphanage. That thing is hideous. Whoever designed that needs an eye exam.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
This is a car. Yeah, this is a car that I also chose. One of the ugliest cars. I mean, the second one, technically, the one is a little better, but I mean, for God's sake, this is just a car that it's better to take a public transport than or take an Uber basically than actually owning one.
This is like the definition of an Uber. I mean, it wasn't sold here, but like, well, actually,
thank God it wasn't sold here.
No, actually, no. What I mean, definition of an Uber, if someone was Ubering this, no one would want to get in it. It's so bad. It's so bad. It is so, oh my God, like, I don't know. They don't know what these people were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Ssangyong's Korean. It's like the smallest automaker out of Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
yep,
they don't sell stuff here, and they shouldn't, because no one's gonna buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I would rather be, speaking of ancient Egypt, I think I'd rather be disemboweled than be seen in one of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really don't this is just looking at me makes me want to vomit.
Yeah.
It's just a really off, like, I know Vans is not the forte, or like, most people want Vans, but I mean, this is just that really bad van.
That D pillar, what the hell is that? Oh my gosh. All right, so you want to go, hold on real quick, actually, let me just work something out here. All right, so would you want to talk about your car? You chose your first car that you chose?
So the first car that I chose is a Chrysler Pt Cruiser.
Gotta go with the Pt Cruiser.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's not a lot of I think this specific trim with the wood panel is probably the worst.
Oh, actually, I found one worse. Look at this thing.
Yeah, okay. This person probably has no life of making this car, because I mean, like, I know it's not like first of all, it's just not a pretty looking car. It's just the
convertible is bad. It looks like a bathtub.
Also, yeah, it looks like, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, one of my teachers, this is kind of like in the mid 2000s, and he said, "Hey, I want to look into like a Pacifica at that time." And the deal, which is it's not the prettiest car, I would admit, but compared to this, yeah, it looks A1 to that. But when he went to the local Chrysler dealer and say, "Hey," kind of made a joke saying, "Wait, do you guys sell hearses around here?" And he's like, "Say no, this is just a regular passenger car." It's like, "Oh yeah, I thought you were going to like carry somebody's corpse inside." But yeah, it's not. This is just not a great car, especially with the wood paneling. This is just a car that ages really poorly. Like, and I know, like, in the mid 2000s, this era of cars, like a lot of these American car brands are trying to make more like kind of like they want to bring back like the retro styling, like, from 50s and 60s. But most of these kind of didn't really answer it very well, and they just kind of, in addition to that, the quality they put into it, it was just really laughable compared to like, a European or Japanese car.
Now, I have to say, when I was a kid, I thought this car was incredibly cool. And it hurt. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking. First of all, I was a kid. I always had like little like scale model like PT Cruisers and stuff. It was so bad. And the reason I know why I liked it is because my uncle had one. My
Mhm.
uncle special ordered one back in 2001 when this came out, and it took him like a year to get it because like he
Oh
didn't
wow.
understand like why is this taking so long. He flew out to Vegas, Las Vegas. They were all taxis. Like every single
Yep.
PT Cruiser was a taxi cab over there. And I'll be honest, he had that thing. He bought it new in '01. His was like his was a manual because he liked the manual transmission. It had like
Mhm.
everything. It was like the highest trim level you could get with a 5-speed. And he
Mhm.
drove that thing. God, he probably got rid of that 4 years ago now. And when he got rid of it, it had like 320,000 miles on it. And
Oh
the
wow.
only reason it lasted that long is because he rebuilt everything on that car. Like
Yep.
he rebuilt like the front suspension. I don't I think he rebuilt some of the transmission. I mean, it was yeah, and that's why I thought that car was cool because my uncle had one. But yeah, no, thank you nowadays. No, thank you. No, granted, when it came, it was actually interesting because it had like it was really versatile for a little hatchback. Like it had a lot of
Yeah.
room inside. It was well priced and it was well equipped, but it
And
just
it's pretty economical too.
yeah. But the thing was like that thing was made for boomers.
Yeah. I
Like
don't think.
like yeah, it was a bad car. It was a really bad car. So
Yeah.
I guess moving on, I'll go with my next car, which is the all new BMW iX. It's BMW's first ever. Well, it's actually not their first electric SUV. It's their first electric SUV that they built from the ground up to be electric. Obviously, we do not get the iX3 here in the US, but that's obviously a just an X3 with a battery and an electric motor. But my God, what? Oh, dearie me, what do we have here? This
This
is
car, yeah, the front is just I don't know with the big grill. Like it's fine with I'm fine with the big grill, but it just and more it's I think this is just a really strange proportion vehicle.
it is,
Um,
yes, the proportions are just way off. It's ugly. I mean, look at it. Like I just see that and I see Bucky the Beaver, like
yeah,
yeah, that's what it fucking looks like. It's horrible. It's horrible. Even the inside, I hate the way that looks on the inside too. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of BMW's interior design language. It's very nice, but they all look the same. All BMWs look the same. Now they're doing something different, and this just is
yeah,
not right. This
yeah.
just two-spoke steering wheels are a fad that needs to die. I hate
Mhm.
the two-spoke steering wheel. The new Range Rover now is a two-spoke steering wheel, and it just doesn't look right. I blame the W222 S class for that. And back in
Yeah.
13 when that came out, that's who started it. And it's just, I mean, like even like now this is kind of interesting, like with the iDrive control being in like the wood that's like capacitive touch. That's kind of cool looking. But yeah, and from the it looks better from the back, but it's still not very good looking.
Mhm. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. The back itself isn't that bad, but I think the biggest thing that real even like the biggest thing that I kind of don't can't believe about this car. This is an $85,000 car,
Yeah.
and frankly, I mean it's a pretty steep price for an electric SUV, frankly. And if I really want to buy an electric SUV, I think the Audi e-tron, hands down, is just such a better looking car.
Yes.
I know the kind of interior and technology. Yeah, it's good, but definitely and probably but yeah, compared to this, e-tron any day.
Yeah.
I
Same
really
here.
wish I really wish the front end they could first of all get rid of the small, make this grill smaller. That's one thing, but it just doesn't feel right just to have a large beaver tooth in
Yeah.
this car. Um,
It's really bad. The electric SUV I would take over the I-Pace. Jaguar I-Pace is also in this
mhm,
price category, and it's actually now for like 2022. It's cheaper. It's a hell of a lot
mhm.
cheaper. and I've driven one of those. I actually was very impressed with the I-Pace. I think it was a good car. It was sporty, but it was still comfortable. It was, I was very familiar with it, of course, coming from a JLR family. I was very used to the one I drove had the old infotainment system. It wasn't Pivi Pro, it was the In Control Touch Pro that was just complete shit. It's the one that I have my Discovery. It's bad. But it drove well. It was comfortable, but when you put it in dynamic mode, I mean, Jaguar's adaptive damper tuning is really good. It can go from being pretty soft to stiff, with one click of a button. Whereas like Audi, there's like the delta between comfort and sport isn't as much as Jaguar, and it's not as much as Cadillac with the MagneRide. Now, Audi uses MagneRide on some of their cars, like the S3 and RS3 and the TTRS all use MagRide. All the other ones you have like either adaptive air suspension or fixed springs with a different type of electronically controlled adaptive damper. JLR JLR does not use MagRide, but yeah, it's interesting. But this it's just a no from me. I mean, yeah, the whole BMW I experiment didn't work out for them. It just didn't work out. They tried to be the first, and it just, the world wasn't ready for them. They were expensive and they were ugly. The i8 was not ugly, but the i3 was ugly, and this is ugly. And yeah, they just weren't ready for it yet. And I'm sure they learned from it, but we'll see.
Yeah. And also, I think even another thing I would also want to point out too is, like, I mean, I know BMW is trying to be more futuristic, and I get that, but especially I think the biggest thing that I kind of looked into this car was, I think it's more, about the grill, obviously. And I think, there's a video, I think by I think Doug DeMiro, or like and a few other like car journalists, and they mentioned saying about like the grill situation, and frankly, not. I think he's like, they took the statistics, say, oh, it's about like 2 out of 5 people love the big grill, or 3 out of 5.
No, it was there was someone interviewed the head of design for BMW, and I think it was regarding like the 4 Series and the new M3 and M4, and then obviously this. Someone interviewed him, and he was bragging that only 20% of the people that they studied liked the design, saying like that's a good thing. Like, no, it's not a good thing. That just means that people hate it. And you're saying that's a good thing? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I know they're trying to be different. BMW has always been very much the same. I know the Chris Bangle era of BMW, not a lot of people liked. I actually quite liked them. Like the E65 series, I thought was probably the best looking 5 Series in my opinion. The later ones, not the early ones. But yeah, it's just but this, yeah, like it's just like what are they doing? What are they doing? I applaud them for doing something different. I do. But this is not the right way to do it. And also I can't take this anymore. I'm burning up. I'm sweating. I hate this to myself. And fuck this. I apologize for the noise. God, I look so fucking stupid. All right. All right, so let's go on to your next car while I
Sure.
fix myself.
So the next car that I chose is the Daewoo Matiz. So Daewoo is another South Korean car brand. Primarily, I think they sell besides South Korea, but mostly in Southeast Asia, or like some developing countries too. And this car came out in 1998. Had like a really small the smallest engine they had is not even 1 liter engine with a 3-cylinder that 0 to 60, well, about 17 seconds, not the fastest car in the world. And what's very interesting is this car, they sell it besides in South Korea, but just many parts of the in various markets from China to Pakistan to South and Latin America to some Eastern European country. This is just like a city car, and frankly, this is just a really ugly city car. Looks like kind of like it just seems like a toy car basically on the road. Also,
Yeah.
in addition to that, interior just absolutely a joke. Obviously, this is a car from the in the early 2000s, late 90s.
Oh, hey, look, here's one that looks good.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
If you want to make your Daewoo Matiz look good, roll it.
Or there's in China, there's actually a 3-wheel version of it. That's actually another interesting caveat they actually made. Yes, they made a 3-wheel.
Good. It caught on fire, and
Nice.
someone stole the wheels.
Yeah, but yeah,
Honestly, worth more if you light it on fire, because it is. God, this thing is shit. Oh, hey, look, here it is crashing. I bet you.
I think this is one of the first cars I think this around like the late 90s. One of the very first actually, I don't think it's not one of the first, but it's one of the few cars that scored a really, like, I think it scored a 0, I think, or like it scored really, really bad. Let's just frankly.
It's like that. It's like that. That Chinese knockoff Mini Cooper that I was talking about last week.
Yeah.
You know, that thing scored 0 in the Latin America, like 0 stars in Latin America. I guess it's like NCAP safety scoring. And below it, they had a picture of a Volkswagen Up, and that thing scored a 5-star. And like, yeah, I'd rather have an accident in an Up than, shitty little Chinese knockoff Mini.
Yep, they actually made a Chinese version of this car too. One is from GM, from Chevy, and there's like another one from I think Le Chi. I think that's how you say it. Yeah, yeah, that's a Chinese version.
Because Daewoo partnered with GM a while back, and that's like how they got into the U.S. market for a little while, and they just completely failed.
Yeah, they still have the brand today in South Korea.
Yeah.
But they just only sell it more like, I think, a spin-off version for GM models, so some particular GM models. And also they just kind of like, for more like an entry level GM cars that kind of sells in like other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a second car that I chose.
So I'm going to kind of skip a few cars real quick. I had the Pontiac Aztec, which is bad, which is kind of making a comeback. It got really popular when Breaking Bad came out. When Breaking Bad was popular, Walter White drove a Pontiac Aztec. My grandmother actually has a Pontiac Aztec. And actually, my grandmother's looks exactly like this. Hers is an 05, which was the last year for it. She had an 04, and someone crashed into her, and she wanted another one, so they got this. Now, as hideous as this car is, I mean, it's bad. It's hideous. It was way ahead of its time. It was kind of you could say one of the first modern crossovers. It was based on the minivan platform, and on GM's minivan platform, and it had an available all-wheel drive system. I think it was called like VersaTrack or something like that. And it was an on-demand. It was a Haldex all-wheel drive system before they got really, really. It was before they got really, really big, and it was also kind of relatively new at the time. Like, of course, the first gen Audi TT had it, and some other like Volkswagen Group cars had a Haldex, but this one was kind of a little bit more advanced version of a Haldex all-wheel drive. But this thing is so practical and so versatile. I mean, you can just yeah, it's ugly, but in terms of like usability, it's amazing. I mean, the cargo space is enormous. Of course, you could get it with a tent. I'm sure they have a picture of the tent somewhere. Oh, here we go. Like the tent. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. And then the interior was also, again, it was mid 2000s GM. Just bean counters were in charge, and I mean, it was so incredibly cheap. The interior and that the plastics are horrendous, but just as for objectively what it is, it's hard to fault it. I mean, it's slow, it's ugly, but in terms of like to haul stuff, it's great. The center console you can take out and it turns into a cooler, so you can put drinks or sandwiches or whatever in there, and you can just take it out and go to the pool or the beach or whatever, and you have drinks. My Defender has that, but it's a refrigerator and you cannot take it out. But yeah, it was an interesting little thing. But yeah, it's you can't talk about ugly cars without talking about the Aztec.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I just want to we'll go through all your next cars, and we just kind of need to power through this.
Sure. Yeah. So the next car that I chose is the Lancia Ypsilon, which is kind of like the city car that Lancia made. And frankly, what's pretty tragic is this is the last Lancia that Lancia are making right now. This is the second gen, and yes, this is just a spin-off version of the Fiat 500. It's pretty hideous. Obviously, I'd rather drive the 500 any day. And I get why they want to make this car. It's just a city car, just to drive around locally around cities. It's efficient, obviously, but the thing is they just do a really bad job into this car. And this is now, I mean, for Lancia right now, which is kind of one of the most iconic brands, this is kind of the last car, and this is the only car Lancia are making right now.
Yeah, Lancia has had better days. Of the Delta Integrale, the 037, they yeah, and I know they had like a version, like in the past 10 years, they had a version of the Chrysler Town and Country, and then like in Italy, the Chrysler 300 was sold as a Lancia, and then they have the Ypsilon, which I actually have been in one of these when I was in Rome. It was we needed a taxi to get back to the hotel, and it was one of these, and I honestly would have preferred to walk. It was pretty tragic. But I know I think Lancia, they just recently announced that they're coming back, but the Delta's coming back, but it's going to be like an electric car, and just like, why? I'm not going to get into electric cars. I don't want to debate about it, but like, it's not going to be the same. No. It's not going to be the same. It's probably going to be really fast and really cool, but it's just not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. So I'll go with my next one real quick. Nissan Cube. This is tragic. And it's funny. It's called the Nissan Cube, but there is not a single straight edge or sharp edge on it. The car is completely round.
Yeah, they actually sell this very well.
This horrible deep or I guess it's a C pillar on this. It's blacked out on the driver's side, but you go over on the that's not the right spec. That's a Japanese spec. Where is a and then like here on this one, look at that. It's this horrible, just it's bad design. And it has the swing out tailgate. And it's just like, this thing has a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder with a CVT. So like, it's horrible to look at and it's horrible to drive. It's that god awful buzzy engine in the Nissan Xtronic CVT, which is also just complete shit. It's just it. Oh God! Like, why would anyone want this?
Yeah, I mean, like I remember this car coming out like kind of like a few years ago, and this is just, I mean, it's cute, I guess, but the thing is, in America, where you're probably going to use freeways a lot, this is not going to be a stable car. Now, I know in Japan where, things are a bit dense and you're going to drive around the city, then all right, fine. And then I might just give it to them. But I mean, again, I probably don't want to buy this car, especially there's just several other cars to have. It just looks really like, it just doesn't seem really like a car to me. Like it's just kind of like a thing that you just want to like do your errands, or a pizza delivery
Right.
could be.
It's bad. I mean, in
this
like this year, I remember you could get shag carpet on the
Yes.
dashboard. It was just like, yeah, it's just a little shag rug. It just goes on the dashboard. It has no, it has no purpose other than to have a piece of carpet on the dash. It is so stupid. I mean, Nissan's making a comeback now. I mean, some of the stuff that they're doing now, I mean, we have the new Z, the new Pathfinder is amazing. One of my coworkers, he just got one, and they finally ditched the CVT. The new Ultima is actually pretty good. It has the VC turbo, the variable compression turbo engine in it. Of course, it still has a CVT, but yeah, Nissan's making a comeback. They really are. The new the truck, the Frontier. That's back. That's really nice.
They really made a comeback for that one.
Yeah. I mean, that thing, I think that was the oldest car sold in the US. It came out in like 05. 05 until like 2020 or 2021 was the last without changing anything really. I know the last year of production, it got the engine from the new Frontier as like a test bed before the new generation went into production, but that was like the only big update they ever did for that thing. So let's go to your next car.
Sure.
The Peugeot 1007.
Yeah,
this car would not drive this thing. That's for damn sure.
Yep, this car I remember. When I was like back in like a very long time ago, I went to Paris, and the Champs-Élysées have a big Peugeot showroom, and I went inside and saw one of these. At that time, I was like, "Ooh, look at this! This is a really cute car with the van and stuff." And believe it or not, this is a Pininfarina, the same people who design the Ferraris and stuff. But the biggest thing, obviously, you can kind of tell is just sliding doors. It's a bit weird. Back then I thought, oh, this is a pretty cool thing. But now looking at it, it just looks like, why the hell did they do this? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not lazy to the point that I can't open a door or can't swing open the door. But I mean, that touch is just really, really odd. I never drove one of these, but I can kind of tell it's not going to be very fun, or it's not going to be very very appealing to look at. And as a matter of fact, this is one of the brand's worst car they ever sell. So eventually, I think a few years after that, they just kind of dropped it, and thankfully they dropped it and something else replaced it.
Yeah. So let's we just kind of running a little short on time here. Let's do your last car, and then we'll talk about the Z06, and then we'll finish up with some questions. All right. So your next car, Lincoln MKT. Sorry to take the words out of your mouth, but
sure. So the Lincoln MKT is, I think, a crossover. I think a 7-seater crossover, and they based this car out of, I think, the Ford Flex. I remember.
That's correct.
And
you can get you can get the engines. You can get a 3.7 liter naturally aspirated V6, made like 300. I think that was like 300 horsepower, or like maybe 305. And then you could get the 3.5 EcoBoost out of the F-150. Yeah, the twin turbo EcoBoost. That thing was like 365 horsepower, and that thing hauled ass. Because you know, we were talking about this before we started recording. When my mom got her Land Rover LR4, which turned into my car, the LR4 was called the LR4 here in the US, Canada, and the Middle East. Everywhere else, it was the Discovery 4. My dad really wanted my mom to look at this thing, and we test drove one, and we test drove it. I do remember it was the 3.5 EcoBoost. It was quick. It was seriously quick. But it was, I mean, this thing, dearie me, what the hell is that? And I remember my mom drove it. She saw it. She was like, no way am I going to get that thing. And we were like, well, we're here. We'll drive it. And it was fast. It rode well. It was comfortable. The interior was cheap, but not too bad. And the nicest thing about it is that it had heated and cooled second row captain's chairs, which was unheard of in a luxury crossover at that time when it came out. Came out like 2010, I think.
Yeah, around there, yeah. And I think they ended around 2019. The sales, I think, it was fine. I think they primarily give it to like the TCP or airport shuttles to kind of like do the chauffeur.
It was a fleet vehicle at the end of its life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then basically, I think now they replaced it with the new Aviator, and hands down, that is a really night and day. Lincoln just kind of head out of the park with that car.
Yeah, the Aviator
to,
is great. Yeah, I mean, compared to the MKT, it's amazing. However, when I sat inside an Aviator, I was a little disappointed. It just didn't feel as nice as the Navigator. And I know it's not supposed to, because the Navigator is obviously the higher up SUV, but I was expecting the same level of quality and craftsmanship, and I just didn't get that at all out of the Aviator. I just it just felt a little cheap, like you would like everything from Ford, whereas the Navigator is a truly luxurious experience to sit in, to be in. But yeah, the Aviator,
the driving too.
It looks great on the outside. Inside, it looks nice, but just when you get inside, it's just not. It was a little disappointing. But this thing is a disappointment, and yeah, there's a reason why they use these here in the U.S. for hearses. Like this is a lot of people's last ever ride in a car. Is the hearse, which is yeah. When I die, I hope my last ride is not in a Lincoln.
Nope. Yeah, this is probably one of the ugliest hearses out there. There's some better ones out there, and this is not one on that list.
No, in England they use Jaguar XJs as a hearse. Like, yes, please give me that. Give me a Jaguar XJ.
Yeah, in Germany they use a one-off version of a spin-off version of the E-Class, and same with Japan. They use a Toyota Century or a Crown with it. So I mean, yeah, those are way nicer than this. So yeah, I think speaking about American cars, the new Z06 that just released.
Yeah, so it's amazing. I mean, they completely knocked it out of the park. I have the press release right here. I printed it off.
Oh, nice.
A couple things I wanted to go over, like this thing. GM spared no expense with this, and I know they did out the whole of the C8 platform, but the thing that's just it's amazing that they're doing this, and they have not announced pricing for this yet. But I bet you it's probably going to be in the mid 80s to low 90s base before you put options on it. But I want to talk about the engine because it's really cool. It's the LT6. It's a 5.5 liter V8. It's still a small block V8, which is really cool, but it's got a flat plane crank. It revs all the way up to 8,600 RPM. Makes 670 horsepower at 8,400 RPM. And 460 pound-feet of torque. That's 623 Newton meters of torque. It's 6,300 RPM. And the other thing that's cool about this is it's still technically a GM small block engine. It still has the small blocks, renowned 4.4-inch bore spacing for my metric system friends. That's 111.76 millimeters. It's the first Corvette with double cams since the C4ZR1 that had a dual overhead cam engine in it. That was actually developed by Lotus. The original, I think that was the LT. Yeah, that was the LT5 is what that was called, and the original C4Z06. But yeah, I mean, it's got forged aluminum pistons, titanium connecting rods. I mean, this thing was engineered. I mean, talk about precision engineering for this engine. I mean, it's built by hand at their Performance Build Center in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I actually have had the chance to tour that factory. That was really cool. That was one of the best car factory tours I've been on. But yeah, that's when the C7 was still in production. But yeah, I mean, it's yeah, you want to give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I remember, I think 2 years ago when they unveiled the C7. Oh, I'm sorry, the C8. I was blown by it. Like I thought GM did not. I thought at first thought I did not thought I thought it was not a Corvette because it's not a traditional V8 in the front. But once I saw it, I was like, boy, that thing just looks amazing. And just for I think what is it, 60,000? It starts around
Yeah,
$60,000, and
it's like
with a
now it's like
with
62 base.
the 62
But
around
when it
there.
came out,
And
it was 59,995.
yeah. And then I was like saying for that deal, for that performance, I mean, yeah, that's like a really, really good money for the value. And these Corvette still has that, magic of, great car, obviously great performance, and definitely you don't have to pay like, six figures for it.
Even
And now
I
with
think
this, yeah,
even if you like, which most people that are specking out C8s are like in the high 70s, low 80s, even at that price, it's still great. And even if you get one with every single thing on it, that where you are spending a little over six figures, it's still a bargain. Still is.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think probably the biggest thing I kind of this is kind of like from my opinion, but like the biggest kind of pullback for the Corvette or just in generally like Corvettes in general is I know GM, like for example, Cadillac has like the Super Cruise, and I know this is a GM premium vehicle. I kind of wish they had some safety amenities. I mean, it's just an option. I mean, like it's just for my preference. Like I know Cadillac has a Super Cruise. I know it's a driver's car, but at the end of the day, even I know some people are going to daily commute on some of these Corvettes. So I kind of wish there were some a bit more like safety technologies on top of it. The car, I know it has some, but definitely not as great as a Cadillac or kind of like a CT5 Blackwing that you kind of mentioned on the last podcast. Kind of really wish Corvette could have some of these safety technologies. Otherwise, yeah, I mean,
That is
definitely the Corvette.
where I completely disagree with you on that. I know people are going to be daily driving these, but the people that are paying the money for this, that are going to daily drive it, they don't want, semi-autonomous driving. However, I'm looking here at the, safety and driver awareness features that is either standard or optional. Specifically this one, the ZR1. Standard rear park assist, so rear parking sensors. Rear view camera, of course, that's the law.
That's the law.
It has front camera as well. It has a blind spot monitoring, a rear cross traffic alert. Heads, for some reason they put heads up display.
Display.
But that's not really a safety feature. And the rear camera mirror, which I do not like in GM cars. I for some reason, like I drove a Cadillac with that, and I got like sick to my stomach. It just like I felt uneasy looking at that. However, when I drove a Range Rover Evoque with that, a loaner car I had, I did not feel that at all. But there's still no depth perception with it, and I'm still. It's been over a year since I ordered my Defender, and I'm still kicking myself for not getting the clear sight mirror that you get on it's optional in JLR stuff, because especially in the Defender, you have that giant tire, and the rear window is kind of narrow, and there's a lot of blind spots back there. That really would have helped. And yeah, I mean, originally I was going to get the SE with a SE trim with the 6-cylinder engine. That came standard, so I didn't really care about it. And then when I ended up going for the S, I was like checking all the options I wanted. I just kind of like looked over that and didn't think about it. And now I'm like, yeah, I wish I would have, if I could change one thing about that car, that's what I would have done. But yeah, this car is, and actually I'll pull it up real quick. So for those that are going to be watching on YouTube, it's a pretty, I mean, it looks cool. We're going up, this is America's answer to the GT3 RS, the Ferrari 488 Pista, all of that stuff. I mean, this is America's track supercar. I guess you could say before it was the Viper ACR.
But that's deceased.
That's gone. Unfortunately, yeah, the Viper was that's a really cool car. But yeah, I think they did a great job with this. In the interior, I've not driven a new C8 yet. I have been in one, and the quality is amazing. And this is a quality that
Oh yeah.
Cadillac should have had.
Oh yeah.
And also other
Way
stuff.
better than the C7.
Oh
Way better
yeah,
than the like.
C6 was bad. C5 was really bad. But
But this actually just feels like a really high end, like just as good, probably like Cadillac good.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, it's amazing, and it's got all this aero on it. It's got the front splitter, the large rear wing. Obviously, this is all part of the Z07 performance pack. It's got the 8-speed Tremec dual clutch transmission. And what else do we have? Oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot this. Magneride. It's got GM's Magneride. It's their 4th generation magnetic ride control. I still think GM does MagRide better than anyone. Of course, like I said in my last one, they kind of invented it. It was developed by an OEM called Delphi. And when Delphi when they came out with MagnerRide, GM actually owned Delphi. So, and that's why like debuted on GM cars. I think the first car that had it was like the 02 Cadillac, like Cadillac DeVille, or maybe it was the maybe it was the DT, whatever. It was an early 2000s Cadillac was the first car that got MagRide. And yeah, they've been refining it ever since, and now they sold it to some Chinese companies now called like Beijing suspension, something like, I don't remember. I'm probably wrong on that, but I know they sold it to a Chinese company, and now they supply MagRide for everyone. And of course, it was developed at the Nürburgring. That's, which I'm surprised. I'm sure they've done a hot lap at the Nürburgring.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of surprised when I watched the reveal and they were talking about, oh yeah, we go to the Nürburgring, and they had all this footage at the Nürburgring, and I was expecting them to say like, this car lapped the Nürburgring in under 7 minutes, and they didn't. I don't know if they're gonna do a Nürburgring run or if they're ever gonna reveal that, but I would be very shocked if they did it in over 7 minutes.
Oh yeah,
because especially with the Z07 pack, which gives you the Z07, it gives you 734 pounds of downforce at 186 miles an hour. Now, this car that you see on the screen does have a Z07 package. It gives you a higher rear wing, different chassis tuning, and it gives you different calibration for the MagRide. And you also get a Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires and Brembo carbon ceramics as well, and optional carbon fiber wheels on this.
This looks absolutely, the wheels, I have to say, they really, it just really looks really nice, I have to say.
Yeah, it's a great car. And the thing is, it's a Corvette. You can daily drive it every day.
Yeah.
You put it in you put it into tour mode. It's soft, it's comfortable, it's very well equipped. The seats are very comfortable. I mean, and it's got a large trunk. Even though it's mid-engine, you can still fit like 2 sets of golf clubs in the trunk if you have the roof on, obviously. But yeah, it's something you could drive every day. And I don't know about reliability with this, because last time a company did a flat plane crank engine in a high displacement engine, that was obviously Ford with the Shelby GT350, the Voodoo engine. They had a lot of problems with that flat plane crank. So in this engine being even bigger, hopefully reliability will be good. But if you want a Corvette and if you want reliable, just get a standard Stingray with the 6.2 in that thing is bulletproof. So let's move on. Let's get into let's kind of wrap this up now. So we are going to do questions. I know you said you wanted to ask me some questions as well.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask some questions that I wanted to ask you. So kind of one of my big ones that I ask a lot of people, car that's not sold here in the US that you would like to try out.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, one of the cars that I really would want to, I was able to drive this when I was in Japan, was the Toyota Crown Majesta. This is a very unknown car outside of Japan, and frankly, I was really surprised about the history of this car. That the Crown has been in production in Japan since the early 50s, and now entered the 15th generation in 2018. Went to Japan and went to Nagoya to drive this car and kind of like drive around, like gently, kind of like drove it around like the parking lot and stuff, and learned about it. Really advanced car. And I was really surprised about learning the history about this car when it first came, when they introduced this trim line in the early 90s, that it had like already a head-up display, a sat nav, a television, parking sensors, rear view camera, ventilated seats. Now, obviously, things are it's a bit outdated now, but keep in mind, back in the early 90s, those technologies absolutely out of the world. And frankly, you're looking at, I mean, I was fortunate to see kind of like the original Majesta. It's not the prettiest car, but I definitely would say give kudos to them for bringing the technology to the automotive world. Now the new Crown Majesta kind of competes with like 5 Series of the E-Class. Driving wise, it's not as like sporty compared to those cars, but that's kind of not the point of the Crown. It's more for like a daily commuter car to kind of like get around the city. Right. But I mean, I think they share the V6 engine alongside with the ES Lexus, or actually prior to that, the GS 350.
So the 3.5 engine, it's been around forever.
Yeah, I think
they
share the. Yeah, it's a good engine, good solid engine, and it's a good engine to kind of like drive around locally. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the car I really wish. I mean, selling it in the States is a bit kind of a question mark, but definitely it is a car that I really kind of hopefully to sell in the States.
All right. So actually real quick. So I know you said you wanted to ask me some questions. So let's do that. And then once we're done with that, I'll ask you a couple more questions and then we'll end it there. That sounds good with you.
Sure. So I think one of the first questions I really want to ask is, if you have unlimited amount of money, what is a car that you love, but that you would not buy?
That I would not buy. Ooh, that's a tough one. Car that I love that I would not buy. Man, I think in some ways it was my previous car of the year, the Porsche Taycan. Lovely car, loved that car. I wouldn't buy one. I would buy an Audi e-tron GT RS over a Taycan Turbo, but I wouldn't buy an Audi e-tron GT either. I just wouldn't purchase that with money. I guess maybe a car that I unlimited money. You know, now that I'm thinking about this, it would probably be a Rolls-Royce Phantom. I love it. They're super nice. I've been very fortunate enough to like sit in one. I've never driven one, or I've never been driven in one, but it is, I mean, it's the pinnacle of luxury and it's awesome. But even if I had unlimited money, I wouldn't get it. I just don't see a point of it. It's extremely expensive and it's going to lose a lot of money. But then again, if you have all the money in the world, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's just something that I love it, but I couldn't see myself owning one. I would rather have cars that I would enjoy driving than one that I would be driven in. And I wouldn't want to be driven in a car, no matter how nice it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, for my answer, it's got to be the R35 GTR. I really love this car back in 2008. You know, obviously the news beating out the Porsche 911 in the Nürburgring, the track, the performance, hands down, way better than the 911 at that time. And it's probably the most important thing. It's a really big comeback for like JDM cars. Now I know kind of like within the last few years, you know, like GTR has kind of like started to gain and improve its engine and performance, but it's 2020. They never really updated this car, and it just feels really outdated.
Well, I know with R35, if you don't mind me speaking here, R35, you know, that came out in 07 in Japan and then 08 everywhere else. My neighbor actually got one, when it came out, when it was brand new. It was the coolest thing.
Mhm.
He didn't have it too long because it was his daily car, and
Mhm.
he has 3 kids. He has a son that's my
Oh
age,
yeah.
other daughters, and it didn't work out, and he ended up getting like an Audi S6 or something. But he had that, and it
Mhm.
was really cool. But every single model year, they do change it up. Every model
Mhm.
year is a little different. They do suspension changes. They do, engine calibration changes, transmission calibration changes. Um, Even though it's all the same,
Yeah.
there every year they do tinker with it a little bit. So they're all a little bit different. But the R35 GTR is a great car. And I
Mhm.
know when that came out, like you said, the engine was made in a dust-free factory. Every engine was hand built. They all made a little bit. No two engines were the exact same.
Mhm.
It was very, very impressive from Nissan. And when it came out, it was pretty cheap. I think it started like
Yeah.
7. Of course, all the
Yeah. So
dealers were
about seventy
marketing them up.
thousand dollars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
around that. And now, like a base one's like what, 110,
I
something
think
like
it's
that.
like even like, yeah, and also in addition to that, even for like the local dealers around me, I mean, even getting it, the MSRP is almost impossible because they
Really.
just mark them up to like $20,000-$30,000 for them, which I kind of find paying $140,000. I kind of feel like, I probably would start to consider the new 911. I rather
Yeah,
consider
I
that.
same here. I For 140 grand, I would not get a GTR. And I know like
Yeah,
the Nismo is like 160, I think.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, at that price point, I mean, you're pushing into 911 turbo
yeah.
money. Um,
Mhm.
I know like if I bought a 911, like if I bought a Carrera, the Carrera that I spec'd out was like it was like high 150s. With
Mhm.
like all the performance stuff. It had Aero Kit. It had the Burmester sound system. It was a manual, it was not PDK. But at that point, and it's also a 911, it's going to hold its value a lot better than a
Oh yeah.
GTR. And
Mhm.
it's reliability wise, Porsches are pretty reliable. Is it as reliable as a GTR? I'm not sure, but I know a lot of the GTRs have been pretty good. But yeah, so you can go ahead with a couple more
Cool.
questions.
I think this next question that I would ask, worst car ever driven? I always enjoy asking this question.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot more now. When I did my second guest podcast with Natisha Chatton, I said, car that she didn't like was I don't remember what she said, but I said it was hard. It kind of changes all the time, but at the time we were wrapping things up. I didn't want to like spend too much time coming up with something. And what I said back then was it was a base model Kia Sportage that I
Mhm.
rented in Miami this past July. And I said it wasn't a bad car. It was just cheap and boring and just a rental car. That's that's what it
Yeah.
was. It had the big screen. It had like an 8-inch touch screen. It had, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, had like lane keeping assist. And this was like the cheapest Sportage you can get. And it wasn't bad. It was just not for me. But now I remember like the worst modern car that I said that I've driven on record, Fiat 500L.
Oh yeah.
That was bad. It was just it had a dual clutch transmission in it. It was so jerky and just so unrefined. It had the 1.4 turbo, which that engine in a 500 Abarth, amazing. Uh, Way too much turbo lag, but that's okay. Like especially in the Abarth, because
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
what gives it its charm. It's old school. It's old school, and it's a fun car to drive, and it sounds great with the Abarth. Well, the Abarth doesn't even have a muffler on it. That they come from the factory without a muffler. But the that engine in the 500L was just horrendous. It was buzzy. It was the NVH levels were through the roof. The interior was just cheap. It had a Beats by Dr. Dre audio system that was just
Oh yeah.
horrible. Um, I think it's extremely ugly, and it was just a just wretched car. It was just like, and they hardly sold any here because
Nobody
quite
wanted
frankly, no one
it.
wanted it, no one asked for it, and it was shit. Now the 500X, they sold more of those because that was a better car. It still had the same engine, but it was a little bit more refined, and that's based on the Jeep Renegade. They're all built in Italy along with the Renegade. and they're shipped over here. That's funny because when I was in Italy back in 2016, we were on a cruise, and the cruise left out of the port of Civitavecchia, which is the port for Rome. It's like 30 miles north of Rome or something like that. And we were in, the port trying to get on the ship. And my dad said, well, why are there all these Jeeps wrapped up in plastic? And I was like, oh yeah, this is a new Renegade. It's built here. They're not built in the US, they're built in Italy. And he was like, oh, is this one of those like Fiat based things? And my dad knows nothing about cars. I'm surprised he knew the words Fiat and based. I was kind of impressed with him. So I was like, yeah, it's based on a Fiat, and it's they're being, if you see one of these, you're going to see a lot of these back at home. And whenever you see one, it came right out of this port. So, yeah.
Yeah. I guess kind of speaking about like FCA vehicles, this is again one of the worst one of the worst.
Stellantis.
It's actually the Dodge Journey, but I mean that's kind of the car.
Horrible. That's bad.
Because I mean, I drove this car when I was in Seattle, and if you know, Seattle rains a lot, especially kind of like the northeast of America. And this kind of like this Kia that kind of like that you rented. It was a rental car, but more specifically, this car, I think, was like a 3-year-old, so had about like 25,000 miles. So I mean, it wasn't that bad, but boy, that car just drove really dangerously, especially in the rain. It handled really poor. Brakes were really worn out. The steering was vague. The interior just smells like socks. The gear change was slow. And probably the thing that really has, I guess you can say about this car that made it really bad was just even the competitors, like, the RAV4, the CRV. I know they're not enthusiast cars, but those cars are just way better than the Journey.
I feel like
the quality.
I feel like the Journey was kind of weird. It didn't compete with like the CRV and the RAV4. It was too big. It had a third row, but it was just a little bit too small to compete with stuff like the Traverse and the Honda Pilot or the Highlander. So I guess you could say it kind of competed with like the Hyundai Santa Fe.
Yeah, I would probably say so.
Because the Santa Fe was a little smaller. It still competed with the bigger ones, but then they came out with, the Telluride and the Palisade, and those are like true competitors. But no, I have driven a Journey. The one we rented one once. It was the base model 4-cylinder. That thing still had a 4-speed automatic.
That thing was just a really slow car.
It was junk. It was. I agree.
Yeah.
It was. That's also. I still think the 500L was worse, but not by much. But I'd say it was probably a tie. I mean, now that you brought up the Journey, like that thing was just shit.
It was they just did a horrible job on this car, and I kind of and they gladly they kind of just pull it out of the line because they just sold really awful in the States and frankly also up across the Atlantic too. I guess the next question that I would want to ask: favorite road trip you taken?
That I've taken. See, I've never really been on a whole lot of road trips other than like when I was younger, we drove to like Florida and stuff. I have driven on the PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, from like San Francisco to Monterey. That was a nice road, but we were in a GMC Acadia. It wasn't fun. Yeah, I don't really have an answer for you on that. I've never really done like a full road trip that was like truly enjoyable, that was fun. I'd like to do some stuff like I'd like to do Europe. I'd like to drive it. Well, next year when I'm going to England, I'm renting a car, but I'm not going to be on like performance driving roads. Like I'll be in Cornwall. There's be some twisty stuff there, but I'm renting like the car that I've chosen is like a Skoda Octavia or similar. So, it's like a Volkswagen Jetta or Passat. I guess it's a little bit more. I think it's in between like the size of a Passat and a Jetta. But yeah, I'd love to go through Germany. I'd love to drive along like the French coast and the Italian coast, like Monaco and all that. I'd love to like do Germany, do the Nürburgring. Yeah. But that's my answer.
Yeah, I couldn't be 100%. I agree with you. Again, kind of like one of my favorite road trips. I have to give it hands down PCH. It's just such a cultural thing, beautiful views. Just a lot of great things on that road. But again, one of my dream road trips is again kind of like the south of Germany to go to Bavaria. Obviously the Autobahn, that's one thing. But in addition to that, it's just a lot of the car stuff. That's truly like the car heaven. BMWs in Munich,
Yep.
Mercedes and Porsche Stuttgart, Audi Ingolstadt. And they're not far drives. They're just about like 2 hours away.
No, Munich is not far from Ingolstadt. I actually I have been to Munich. I've been to BMW. I've been to the BMW Museum, and also the BMW Welt. That was really cool. And actually, we did take a tour on the Romantic Road in Germany. That's a famous kind of road trip road. We did it, and we had a tour guide, and he was taking us around in his Mercedes. It was like a loaded out Mercedes Metris van.
Nice.
But yeah, that was cool. Like that would be fun in something like a Porsche 718 or a 911 or something I've always would have liked to do. And a lot of the car makers have stopped doing it. And they even stopped it before COVID was like the European delivery.
Oh yeah.
I know Audi stopped it a while ago. But BMW, you can take delivery at BMW Welt if your car was made
you can do that
there. And you can't do that with an X5 because they're all built in South Carolina or an X3 or whatever. And you can drive your car around all around Europe. You get a certain amount of insurance for a few days. And then if you want to drive longer, you can add insurance, and then you can drop it off there's locations all over Europe where you can drop it off, and then they'll be shipped back to the US. But the thing is, if you do that, you can get up to 10% off of your MSRP. Purchasing price by doing that. But the thing is, it takes a lot longer to get your car back to the US. So where is it if you order a car, it's built, let's say, I know let's go with my dad's Audi, his Q7. He ordered that in May of 2017, and it showed up the first week of August 2017. So of course it's for ages it sat in a computer just waiting to be built. And then for the specs sat in a computer. And then, they built the car, and then they shipped the car out, and then it arrived. I'm sure by the time it was built, to the time it arrived in the US, it was a month and a half. So yeah, the car was built a month and a half later, it arrives at the dealer. Whereas that's obviously a different story these days with COVID and the whole issues with getting stuff shipped. We won't get into that, but the thing is, if you do the European thing, it could take up to 3 to 4 months to get your car back.
Yeah,
which is just ridiculous. But you do save some money, and it does eventually arrives at your dealer. But yeah, that's just another thing.
Yeah. So I guess kind of there are some questions you also would like to ask.
So this is gonna be the last question, and it's the question I ask everyone. So I'm sure this year you've driven a lot of cars. Cars that you liked, cars that you don't like. What has been, what is your car of the year?
Car of the year is might be, I was going to say the BMW M3 G80, but within recently, I think a few weeks ago, I was able to kind of sit inside the Porsche Taycan, and probably I might give it to that one.
Okay.
Technically, I know technically they made it last year, but I'd probably, based on the cars that I drove, probably this might be it. And probably the biggest thing is, first of all, I know Tesla Model S is the new EV. It is the king of the EV, especially in California. But
everywhere.
The Taycan, and everywhere. But Taycan, I know the ranges isn't up to standard with the Tesla, but I definitely would say quality, hands down, the Porsche wins.
Oh, of course.
A million years by
Tesla quality shit. It's just shit. You can't deny the quality of Tesla's absolute just dog shit. I hate those cars.
Yeah.
I hate them, and I like to hate on them, but the quality, you can't argue with that. And of course, I said, I hate Tesla. Yes, their battery technology is better than anyone right now. I fully admit that. Their battery technology is insanely good. This past week, I was very fortunate. I had the chance to drive the new Model S Plaid. I'm going to be talking about that in a future episode, so not today.
Okay.
But a lot of the quality complaints I had with the last Model S I drove, which was a few years ago, have been remedied with the new one, but it's still not a quality product. And
Yeah.
also, I will say the speed of that thing is dangerous. It is dangerously fast. And the other thing is, it's expensive. It's like $130,000.
Yeah.
But it's not like out of reach for a lot of people. And of course, a lot of people that buy Teslas aren't the brightest. I see a lot of accidents happening with that car. I mean, and I'll say this. I drove that thing. I got on an on-ramp onto the highway. I put my foot to the floor. I had my foot down for probably 6 seconds. I looked down. I was doing 137 miles an hour.
Ooh.
That's how fast. That's how fast it was. It was ridiculous. In the yoke.
Yeah.
Fucking stupid. Just throw it away. Give me a normal steering wheel.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that I really make probably the port. It just basically, I know it's not as accelerates as fast as the Tesla, and I get that, but as just an overall car, like putting it around the corners. Oh yeah, the Taycan and probably the sister car. I've
driven one. Like I said, you've listened to all of my podcast episodes. For me, the Taycan was my car of the year this year. I drove a turbo. I was shocked by how good it was. It first and foremost was a Porsche that just happened to be electric. And
they did a decent job.
Yeah, it drives like a Porsche. It feels like a Porsche. The steering was a little bit strange. I didn't like the steering. And then I drove the RS e-tron GT. The steering was a lot better. But no, the Taycan, that's a solid choice. It really is. And I think it's kind of funny because for a while that was my car of the year. Then Natisha Chatton, she said the e-tron GT. I don't think she drove the RS version, but she drove the e-tron GT, and that was like her car of the year. And now you're saying Taycan as well. So it's kind of funny that we've had, well, obviously me on all of them, but we've had two guests say basically the same thing because it's the same platform. It's underneath, it's the same car. And of course, me, it was. I mean, that's kind of saying something that it's a great car. But since I drove the Cadillac CT4 and CT5 V Blackwings, my car of the year is the CT5.
Nice.
Even though I preferred the handling of the CT4 just a little bit better, the V8 and the CT5 and the 6-speed just did it for me. I'm sure if the CT4 I drove was a 6-speed, it might be just as good, but you can't beat a V8.
Yeah, I 100%. I mean, I think this might be the final midsize sedan, actually, midsize performance sedan with a traditional raw V8. We would ever
100%.
Actually a manual too.
It's gonna go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say definitely. And the other thing probably I would say is Cadillac really stepped up their game on, especially the interior. Like ever since the beginning of CTSV, the first CTSV interior was just an absolute like joke. Looking back at it, but now
second gen was better, still not great. Third gen was better, not great. Third gen had Q, which was horrible. And now CT5 is the replacement for the CTS. It's still not as good as the Germans. I mean, there's some areas with some cheap plastics, but it's in areas where it's okay to have cheap plastics. But still, just the quality of leather, the quality of the metals and stuff isn't as good. But it's really close, and I would rather have that car over any of them. I would rather have it over an E63, even though the E63's interior is nicer. The RS7 has a much nicer interior than the Cadillac. The M5, great car, but I've driven one and it just didn't sit right with me. That was just a luxury car with a nuclear bomb under the hood. It handled well, but not great. It didn't feel like a BMW. It didn't feel like an M car. But the CT5 felt more like an M5 than the current M5.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard actually. Like I know a friend of mine, is a big Cadillac performance guy, and he said this might be probably the one. First of all, it's the best Cadillac performance they ever made, hands down, right now. But also second, it's just Cadillac just really stepped up their game now, and not just, I'm not saying only the CTS cars or the V cars, but just even the new Escalade.
Escalade's lovely.
I know, what is it, the 7-seater, or the 7-seater? I forgot what
the CT or the XT6.
Yeah,
one's, I think, that's okay. I didn't think it was great, but it was acceptable. But obviously the best one, the old CT6 was really good.
Yes.
Obviously the new Escalade, and then all of their other current stuff, the CT4 and CT5. This XT6, XT5, and XT4 interiors are all about the same. If you get a higher end CT5 or XT6, they're a little nicer, but other than that, they're all about the same. Which the quality is good, not great.
Yeah, but they really stepped up their game, and that's probably the thing that I really love, or just love about them, especially within the last few years. Like, yeah.
All right. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. So Brian, why don't you again just kind of give everyone where to find you, your YouTube, social medias, and all that.
Sure. So my YouTube channel is Vroom Vroom Brian, and also that's also my Instagram name with the underscore Vroom Vroom underscore Brian, and that's my Instagram and Facebook name. And that's kind of the thing of kind of starting to bring back the YouTube channels content now. Also kind of expanding out now to do some car spotting on my Instagram, and just kind of like on just some of my blog that's coming up soon. So be sure to have a look out for that.
Yeah. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was fun, and we'll have you on again soon. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.